Dear students, welcome to the lecture series on the topic Engineering Graphics. Today we are going to discuss about orthographic projections of the points. I am Dr. IPS Ahuja, Professor, Department of Mechanical Engineering, Punjabi University, Patiala. Now here we are required to obtain the orthographic projections of the point H, which happens to lie 25 mm below the horizontal plane and into the vertical plane. So here we will be evaluating the front view, top view, left hand side view and the right hand side view orthographic projections of this point H. Now as we observe the spatial location of this point with respect to the four quadrants, so we observe that since this point happens to lie into the vertical plane and 25 mm below the horizontal plane, so we can conclude that this point H, it will be lying simultaneously into the third and the fourth quadrants over here. So let us evaluate the location of this point with respect to the three reference planes over here. So here we have got the horizontal plane, the vertical plane, the left side profile plane and the right hand side profile plane, which have been arranged into the mutually perpendicular directions into the spatial arrangement, thereby providing us with the four quadrants over here. So here we have got quadrant number 1, quadrant number 2, quadrant number 3 and quadrant number 4 available over here. So let us locate this point H with respect to horizontal plane and the vertical plane. So now we can see that here we have located this point H into this vertical plane, which is available with us below the horizontal plane. So this point location, it will be common to third quadrant and the fourth quadrant over here. Now since we are going to observe the front view, top view, left hand side view and the right hand side view orthographic projections of this point onto different reference planes which are mutually perpendicular to each other, so we need to carry out the rotation of the horizontal plane, the left side profile plane and the right hand side profile plane, so that all these orthographic projections we should be able to obtain onto a single plane over here. So now here we can check this portion of the horizontal plane which is lying in front of the vertical plane. It will be rotated into the clockwise direction, that is into the downward direction, about this XY reference line or the hinge over here. Similarly, this portion of the horizontal plane which is lying behind the vertical plane, it will again be rotated into the clockwise orientation, that is into the upward orientation, about this XY reference line or this hinge available over here. This portion of the left profile plane, that is falling into quadrants 1 and quadrant 4, so this will be rotated in the leftward direction about this vertical hinge available over here, whereas this portion of the left profile plane which is lying behind the vertical plane into the second and the third quadrants, so this will be rotated towards the leftward orientation about this vertical hinge available over here. Now this portion of the right profile plane which is available in front of the vertical plane into quadrants 1 and 4, so it will be rotated towards the rightward direction about this vertical hinge. And finally this portion of the right profile plane which is lying behind the vertical plane into quadrants 2nd and 3rd, it will be rotated towards the rightward orientation about this vertical hinge available over here. So this way we will be able to locate all the orthographic projections into the same plane of orientation over here. So now when we look at this object from the front view orientation, so we observe that the front view projections of this point will be located onto the vertical plane 25 mm below the horizontal plane over here. So now when we look at this point from the top, so we observe that this point H, top view projections will be available over here into the vertical plane onto the XY reference line, because this point H is contained by the vertical plane over here. So now whether we assume this point H is located into third quadrant or fourth quadrant, there will be no change in the position or orientation of these front view and top view orthographic projections over here. Whereas when we assume that this point H happens to lie into the fourth quadrant, so then we will observe that into the fourth quadrant, the right hand side view projections of this point, they will be available onto left profile plane over here. Similarly, when we look at this point H from the left hand side orientation, the left side projection of this point will be available into the right profile plane at this particular position over here. But if we assume that this point H happens to lie into quadrant number 3. Now when we look at this point from the left hand side orientation, so this left profile plane, it will be lying in between the object and the observer. So the left hand side view projections of this point will be obtained onto the left profile plane at this particular position over here. Similarly, we are looking at this point from the right hand side view orientation. So then the right hand side view projections of this point will be obtained onto the right profile plane, which will be located over here at this particular position. So now there will be interchangeable left hand side and right hand side views when we assume that point is located into fourth quadrant or the third quadrant. So now let us evaluate the orthographic projections of this point H. So here we have got the horizontal plane, this is the vertical plane. So now we know that this point H is located into the vertical plane at a distance of 25 millimeter below the horizontal plane. So the spatial location of this point H has been obtained over here. So now whether this point is assumed to lie in fourth quadrant or third quadrant, the front view projections will remain the same. So when the observer is going to look at this point H from the front view orientation, so the front view projections H dash will be obtained into the vertical plane at a point 25 millimeter below the horizontal plane. So the original point H and the front view projections H dash, they are going to coincide with each other onto the vertical plane below the XY reference line available over here. Now when the observer is going to look at this point H from the top view orientation, so once again, irrespective whether this point is located in fourth quadrant or the third quadrant, this point H will be projected onto the XY reference line at this location over here. So now next we need to obtain the side view projections corresponding to this point H, assuming that to begin with this point is located into fourth quadrant. So when we assume that this point H happens to lie into the fourth quadrant, so then let us first of all obtain the left profile plane over here. Now when the observer is going to look at this point H from the right hand side orientation, then we observe that the right hand side view projections of this point H will be obtained onto the left profile plane at this position, that is 25 millimeter below the horizontal plane into the vertical plane, because the distance of this point H from the vertical plane happens to be 0. So into the left profile plane at this particular position, that is alongside the x1 y1 reference line, alongside this particular hinge, we are going to locate point H dash as right hand side view projections of the point, assuming point to be located into the fourth quadrant. So now once we draw this right profile plane into quadrant number 4, so we will observe that when the observer is looking at this point from the left hand side orientation, so the projections of this point H will be obtained onto the right profile plane at a distance of 25 millimeter below the XY reference line into the vertical plane over here. So now we can check that once we draw these three projector lines over here, so we are able to establish the relationship between the front view orthographic projection and the right hand side view and the left hand side view orthographic projections over here. That is, all of these three projections, they will be available at a distance of 25 millimeter below the horizontal plane or below the XY reference line. So now let us assume that this point H happens to lie into the third quadrant. So now into the third quadrant, the plane of projection, it should lie in between the object and the observer. So now once we draw the left profile plane and assume that this point H happens to lie into the third quadrant, so when the observer is going to look at this point or the object from the left side orientation, so the projections of this point H will be obtained into the left profile plane as point H double dash, which is going to represent left hand side view projections of this point, assuming point to be located into the third quadrant. And these projections we have marked with red color to distinguish them from the right hand side view projections which we had obtained earlier, assuming object to lie into the fourth quadrant. Now when we are going to look at this object from the right hand side view orientation, assuming object to lie into the third quadrant, so here we have obtained the right profile plane into the third quadrant. Now when the observer will be looking at this point H from the right hand side view orientation, so now the projections of this point H will be obtained onto the right profile plane at a distance of 25 millimeter below the XY reference line. So here we can check, we have marked H double dash point indicating the right hand side view projections of this point H into the right profile plane. So this way the front view orthographic projections, the top view orthographic projections and the side view orthographic projections, depending upon the location of the point into fourth quadrant or the third quadrant, they have been appropriately located into the 3D spatial arrangement over here. Now let us obtain the 2D orthographic projections corresponding to this point H. So now here we have obtained the XY reference line and X1, Y1 reference line corresponding to the left side profile plane over here. So this is the left side profile plane into third and the fourth quadrants. So this hinge we have shown over here. So now we have also obtained the X1, Y1 reference line corresponding to the right profile plane which we have drawn into the third and the fourth quadrants over here. Now we know that as we are going to look at this point from the front view orientation, we have obtained the front view projections H dash onto the vertical plane at a distance of 25 millimeter below the horizontal plane over here. Now when the observer is going to look at this point H from the top view orientation, so we observe that since this point H, it is contained by the vertical plane, so the top view projections of this point H, they will be located onto the XY reference line just above the front view projections over here. So just above the front view projections onto the same vertical projector locus line onto the XY projection line, we have been able to obtain the top view orthographic projections of this point H into the horizontal plane over here. So now let us obtain the side view orthographic projections of this particular point H. To begin with, assuming that this point H happens to lie into the fourth quadrant. So in order to obtain the profile view projections, we have to draw two transfer lines over here. So these two transfer lines, one on the left hand side, another one on the right hand side, we have obtained from the intersection points of the XY reference line and the left profile plane, and the XY reference line and the right profile plane over here. And these two transfer lines have been located at an angle of 45 degree with respect to the XY reference line. And we are going to use these two transfer lines in order to transfer the distance of this point H from the vertical plane. And as we know that this point H, it is contained by the vertical plane. So this point H will be located at a zero distance from the vertical plane. So now from this point H, which is located onto the XY reference line at a zero distance from the vertical plane. So here we have drawn a horizontal projector line up to this transfer line, which is located into the left profile plane over here. So now wherever this horizontal projector line is going to intersect with this transfer line, so through this intersection point, we are going to draw a vertical projector line into the left profile plane such that this distance of this vertical projector line from the vertical plane will be zero. It will be indicated as zero distance over here. So now up to a distance of 25 millimeter, we have to extend this line, and then from this particular point H dash, we have to draw a horizontal projector line into the left profile plane. So wherever this horizontal projector line drawn through point H dash, it is going to intersect with this vertical projector line, which is coinciding with the vertical plane into the left profile plane. You can check this vertical projector line, it is lying into the vertical plane and it is lying into the left profile plane as well. So this intersection of these two projector lines will provide us with the location of point H double dash, which is indicated by blue color, into the left profile plane right hand side view projections over here. Assuming that this point H happens to lie into quadrant number 4. Now let us obtain left side view projections of this point onto the right profile plane. So now we can check, and the observer is going to look at this object from the left side orientation. So this point H will be projected onto the right profile plane into the quadrant number 4 at a distance of 25 millimeter below the horizontal plane or the XY reference line. So now from point H, we are going to draw a horizontal projector line and extend it till it intersects with this inclined transfer line over here. Now from this point onto the transfer line, we are going to obtain a vertical projector line contained by right profile plane over here. So now we have to draw a horizontal projector line from the point H dash and extend this horizontal projector line till it intersects with this vertical projector line. So the intersection of these two projector lines will provide us with the location of point H double dash into the right profile plane in the fourth quadrant over here, indicated by blue color point H double dash. So this point H double dash indicates left hand side view projections of the point. Now let us assume that this point H happens to lie into quadrant number 3. So if this point is assumed to lie into quadrant 3, then whenever we are going to look at this point from the left hand side direction, Now we observe that this left profile plane, it happens to lie in between this object, that is point H, and the observer. So the left side projections of this point H will be obtained onto the left profile plane, indicated with red color as point H double dash. So here we can see once again we have drawn a horizontal projector line from point H into this transfer line. Wherever this horizontal projector line drawn through the point H, indicating distance of point H from the vertical plane, which is 0. So it intersects with this transfer line. So from this intersection point, once again we are going to draw a vertical projector line over here. So this vertical projector line coinciding with left profile plane means that here we have got the location of this point H double dash into the left profile plane coinciding with the vertical plane over here. So now this vertical projector line should be extended up to the point when it is going to intersect with this horizontal projector line drawn through this point H dash. So now once we draw a horizontal projector line through the point H dash into the left profile plane, so the intersection of these two projector lines, it will provide us with the location of point H double dash, that is left hand side view projections obtained into the third quadrant corresponding to the point H available over here. So this way we can see there is interchangeable right side and left side views depending upon whether the point is located in fourth quadrant or the third quadrant. Now let us obtain the right hand side view projections of this point H into the third quadrant. So here we have got right profile plane. So when the observer will be looking at the object from the right hand side orientation, so this right profile plane, it will be falling in between the observer and this object. So the projections of this point H will be obtained onto the right profile plane in the third quadrant at a distance of 25 millimeter below the XY reference line. So here the right hand side view projections will be obtained at this location over here. So now let us draw the horizontal projection from the point H onto the right profile plane, indicating distance of this point from the vertical plane, which is 0. So wherever this horizontal projector line, it intersects with the transfer line, from this point we are going to obtain the vertical projector line. We can see this is a vertical projector line, and this vertical projector line should be extended into the right profile plane up to the point where it is going to intersect with this horizontal projector line obtained through the point H dash over here. So the intersection of these two projector lines into the right profile plane, this is the right profile plane. So we are going to obtain this intersection point as H double dash, that is right hand side view projections of the point H, assuming point to be located into the third quadrant. So this way we have been able to obtain the front view orthographic projections, the top view orthographic projections, and these two orthographic projections, that is front view and top view orthographic projection, they will remain unaltered irrespective whether the object happens to lie in quadrant third or quadrant number 4. But when we assume that the point H happens to lie in quadrant number 4, so the right side projections will be obtained on the left side onto the left profile plane, and the left side orthographic projections will be obtained onto the right profile plane onto the right side available over here, indicated with blue color. Whereas when we assume that the point H happens to lie in quadrant number 3, so the left side projections will be available on the left side, and the right side projections, they will be available onto the right side. So this is all for today. So we are going to continue with further discussion regarding few more illustrative cases of orthographic projections of the points in the coming lectures. So thank you very much. Thanks a lot.